Ooh, ah, oh. Yeah, let's do this. Hello, boys and girls and ghouls of all ages. You get it? Because it's Halloween? Veroween? Yeah, whatever. You don't pay me to be a comedian. Well, you don't really pay me at all. Here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be checking out Vero Engineering and a multitude of their knives. 4 of them, as a matter of fact. And 2 of their pry bars as well. And I got to tell you, starting things off, I've said this before, and I'll probably never stop saying it. I really do hate overhyped knives or overhyped products of any kind. And generally when I see just everybody talking about one thing, whether it could be a knife, it could be a TV show, it could be a movie, a lot of times I'll lose interest in it because you really don't know the source. You don't know if the people that are yapping about whatever that thing happens to be really even knows what they're talking about, or if they're just jumping on a bandwagon and going, yeah, sure, this is the greatest thing ever. So I've kind of avoided Vero for quite a long time, since I first heard about them about maybe a year and a half or so ago. And but I kept hearing from people that I did respect, like Metal Complex. He did a couple videos on them. I watched them, and I suggest you do as well. And I had a private conversation with him, and he's like, "Yeah, man, you got to check it out for yourself." And I'm very glad that I did. But I'm going to tell you this right away. It wasn't love at first sight. I did like the designs, but I wasn't sure if I really liked the execution, if I really liked the location of the flipper tabs on the flipper models, which 3 of these 4 are. And it did take a little bit of time for them to grow on me. And I'll tell you right now, kind of spoiler for the whole video, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. We're going to go down and look at them close up because it's going to take a long time to go through 4 knives. This will be a record long video. Little spoiler, they really did grow on me very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, this little Synapse XL is probably one of my favorite knives that I've ever... I'm sorry, Synapse Mini. One of my favorite knives that I've ever had a chance to play with. Now, this isn't my knife, but you know what I mean. It grew on me almost immediately, and then I came to appreciate all of the others as well. So a lot of you are coming here because you may be hearing of Vero for the very first time, and you're curious, and you're doing a YouTube search, you're not subscribed to me, and you kind of want to hear a regular person's interpretation of what the brand is. And also somebody that collects a lot of knives. And others are just going to be curious. They've seen all the other videos and heard all the other things about the knives, and you just kind of want to hear what I have to say about it. Well, I do have a lot to say. This is going to be about a 45-minute long video because, as I mentioned, going through 4 knives and 2 pry bars, it does take a while. So without any further ado, I do want to get downstairs and show you these knives close up. We'll take a look at each one individually, then all of them as a group, and do some comparisons and give you my personal thoughts. Before we get there, if you like the video, you find it of any use, please click like. It does help the algorithm. It helps more people get a chance to see this video because YouTube won't be stifling it and shoving it back down like they've been doing for almost 2 years with my stuff. And also, if you're not already a patron, go over to patreon.com. For as little as $5 a month, you can support the channel. I can bring in more exclusive product. We can upgrade the set and the cameras and all that kind of good shit. And on top of that, you get a chance to win free shit, including knives and other great EDC gear, all the way up to high-end handmade customs. Yes, those are part of the prizes. So just very quickly before we go downstairs and take a look at these close up, I feel extremely lucky to have gotten the opportunity to have had a chance to play with these for about a month now, and to play with more than just one and get a really good feel for what the brand is actually like. I've had a chance to chat a little bit with the owner of the company, Joseph, and I got to tell you, he's one of the most nice and genuine guys that you'd ever want to talk to. And you know what? Sometimes that does play into where we're going to be investing our money. So it's nice to, virtually meet somebody as seemingly genuine and wonderful as Joseph is. And I do look forward to seeing him this year at the Blade Show in Atlanta. So if you have any questions about Vero in general or about these individual specific knives, anything I may have missed, please put them down in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to follow up, and I'll encourage Joseph to do so as well, because obviously he will have more knowledge than anybody else on the subject. Without any further ado, let's go down there and take a look at these bitches close up. Now, as you see, we've got a lot of stuff to go over here. We've got 4 knives and 2 of the pry bars. But I think the first thing to start with really is about what Vero Engineering is and who is behind it. When you're looking at Vero Engineering, you're looking at the brainchild of Joseph Vero. He's a design engineer turned knife designer. He's now a full-time knife designer, partnering up with Best Tech for the manufacturing. And if you're not really familiar with Best Tech, I don't really blame you. They're really nowadays a lot behind other names, like as we see with Vero Engineering, creating really nice quality, affordable, easy to afford utilitarian knives, tactical knives, flippers, whatever category that you think that you fall into for your EDC rotation. Best Tech has most likely partnered with somebody that designs something that's going to be right up your alley. Now, Best Tech really isn't up there with the likes of Riot yet, but Riot really is their own unique success story, and they've partnered up with so many really high-end knife makers, custom knife makers that have spent time teaching them processes and procedures more along the lines of traditional knife making, more so than manufactured goods, that they've been able to step their game up beyond everybody else. You know, they've had, like, Todd Begg has hung out with David and taught him how to do hand rubs and taught him how to do sweeping plunges and all these wonderful things that custom knife makers do that a production knife company may not really focus on. But Best Tech is really making a really good, solid product, good actions, good materials. Everything's nice and clean. There's nothing really to complain about. And what's really great about them is the fact they've kept their prices realistic. So, you know, if they were charging Riot money where you could be, or Custom Knife Factory money where you could be spending, you know, $500, $600, $800, $1,000 in some cases, then you would expect them to be on that level. But they're not. You know, you're spending a couple $100, really on the low end of the quality of these knives. The quality far exceeds the price that you spend in most cases. Now, the way that I look at Vero, putting the hype aside, we'll discuss more about that in a moment. In my personal opinion, they're like the Apple of the knife world. Their design language spreads across their entire family of models. Even when the knives are distinctly different in their utilitarian concept. Let's say going from a Warncliffe to a spear point. Even when it's a non-flipper as compared to their flipper models, the design language remains. You know that you're looking at a Vero. It is unmistakable. From that little notch in the blade to the simplistic, futuristic design of the entire knife, you know what you're looking at. It is unmistakably Vero, and that's a very important distinction and very difficult to achieve. A lot of companies, they're either going to be branded as very boring because all their designs look alike because they don't know how to take their design language and spread it out, or they don't have a recognizable, cohesive design. Every knife is entirely different in their product line, and you may not recognize knife A and knife B as being from both the same designer or manufacturer or knife maker. So it's a very delicate balance, and I think Joseph has done it exceedingly well. I'm very impressed with the fact that all of these knives are indistinguishably Vero. I'm sorry, distinguishably Vero. But each of the individual designs vary in certain different ways that make them completely different models. It's very, very cool. So let's break this down. We've got a Synapse Mini, an Axon, an Isotope, and a Synapse XL, plus the two fulcrums. I'm going to put the fulcrums to the side for right now. We're going to focus on the knives. I'm going to unzip these. I'm going to keep the cards out, the COA cards, so that you can keep track of the knives that I'm talking about as I'm speaking about them. Another thing that brings forth that comparison to Apple products is the packaging. The packaging is clean and concise, but there's a lot to it. Just having this stitched patch, very slick, very cool. It identifies the knife that's inside the pouch without even having to write down the model name on it. I think that is super, super slick. Really nice cases. They remind me of Maxpedition cases. I don't think that they are because they'd be like $30 a piece, and that's a bit much to spend on your packaging. I kind of wanted to get to this one last because it has become my favorite. But starting here, this is the Synapse Mini. I don't typically like really, really tiny knives. However, there is something about this knife, the way that it feels in the hand, the overall balance, the flickability of that flipper, everything about that, that is my clear favorite out of these four knives. I absolutely love it. And what makes me sad is every knife I'm about to show you is out of its production run. Every time Vero does a drop, the knives sell out within minutes. They're gone, the run is over, they move on to another model. And then sometimes they'll come back and do a revised version of that particular knife. Now, this is the first run, an example of the first run from the Synapse Mini. I don't want to pay secondary market prices, even though they're not too unrealistic yet. I don't want to go searching, go crazy. I'm going to beg Joseph to let me keep this one. I fell so in love with this knife, and I don't want to spend hundreds more to get one on the secondary market because you can't get this particular knife right now, and it makes me a little bit sad. We'll discuss the unique design features as we move on, but for right now, I'm going to get this out of the way, and we're going to open up more. So that should still be barely in frame there. We'll leave that there with its COA card, and we'll get to the next one here. Another very cool patch. And here, dun, 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 come on out. Here we have the Isotope. And this is a big, bad mofo. Very, very large. Very slick, very cool. I love the fact that the inlay is done on the entire presentation scale. The opposite side is just the titanium lock side. And again, the actions, once we get past the detent there, actions are very smooth, very fast. They are noticeably different from one knife to the next, and I find that to be rather interesting. So that is the Isotope. Moving on to the next one here. This is significantly lighter in weight. We bring this out, and this one is the Axon. The axon is remarkably different. Here we have a liner lock. Here we have no flipper tab. Here we have that notch on both sides of the blade. So yeah, you can do that stupid Spidey flick that I can't stand. This is an entirely different model. However, you can look at the two and go, yeah, that is clearly made by the same company. That is clearly designed by the same person. Yet they're wildly, wildly different. You can use this as a front flipper here. In this particular variation, instead of having a belt satin blade, it has a nice hand rub satin. Very clean, very nicely done. And there's almost no weight to this whatsoever. And then we'll get to our fourth and final, and then we're going to start digging into each one individually. And this is just the large version of the first one. This is the Synapse XL. Much, much larger, as you can see, but same design. And instead of being titanium bolster with carbon fiber, this is the titanium bolster with the raw cut micarta. And again, the action between this and the isotope is pretty different. It really is. Even though the blade is about the same size, it's about the same weight, there's just something about how it feels that makes it a little bit different. This one, I can hear the detent ball rubbing a little bit into the blade. So I don't believe this one's very broken and it hasn't worn in a track on the blade yet. And it probably could use a little drop of oil just on the detent. So there is the Synapse XL. So we're going to get these all laid out so that you can see them. And we're going to break them down individually. Let me grab my scale real quick, because I was ill-prepared and didn't have it over here with me. So let's get a quick little weigh job to these guys. Oh no, didn't realize how far down my display was. And let's go and really get the differences between the two big guys. So you got 5.6 ounces, which is fairly hefty. You definitely feel it in your hand, but it's not obnoxiously heavy. And that's the isotope. And then we go to the basically the same size, 5.5 ounces. No real difference. But now take a look. You've got a very, very comparable size here, okay? So again, that was what, 5.5? And then, boom, 3.8 ounces. For a lot of people, that's going to be a make it or break it for EDC, because this isn't big chunks of titanium like the other one. This is just micarta. Not even supported by titanium. You have a tab lock built inside. So that is fitted inside of the micarta frame. And then you have a titanium backspacer just used as a backbone for the knife to give it the support that it needs. And it weighs considerably less. So again, that was 3.8 ounces. What's the difference between that and this little guy? Very little, 2.6 ounces, less than an ounce difference. And there's a tremendous size difference between them. Again, this is still my particular favorite. I really thought it was going to be the isotope, to be honest with you, because the isotope is very, very cool. I love the inlay. That burgundy and that maroon micarta looks fantastic. It feels really, really nice. The inlay was done perfectly. And I like the larger size of the blade. I thought that was going to be my favorite. It was actually the very first one that I opened from this package, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be the winner right there. And then, man, I picked up the Mini Synapse, and I don't know, there's just something about it. It's just lightning fast. It has a really cool action, and it fits better in my hand. And I'm going to talk about that right now. Let's talk about his design in the frames, in the handles. And you see these very, very large notches. I don't really want to call them finger notches because they're not. It's just a very large opening. Here's the thing. On this little knife in my hand, that fits perfectly where my fingers want to go. It fits my index and my middle finger just enough to where they're kind of wedged in there, and it gives me good support. The jimping back here is fantastic. However, when you get to the larger designs, what it does is it tends to push the knife forward further in my hand than I want it to be, and my index finger fits in there, but it's sliding my middle finger out. I would either prefer that to be shorter, where it's just my index finger in there, or wider would just look obnoxious, I think. Wider where it would hold both of those fingers. So for me, the hand fit isn't quite perfect on the isotope, even though it's not egregious in any way. It's certainly not a make it or break it kind of thing. But when you talk about comfort, everybody's going to have their personal feelings. They're going to want it to feel a certain way. And when you have the luxury of playing with multiples at the same time, you really get a feel for how that's going to change in the hand. Because of how far in it's cut, for me, it tends to turn the knife in my hand a little bit. If I'm really going to be cutting something, I'm afraid it's going to shift from here to there far too easily, because it's carved out on both sides, the lock and the presentation side, to the same degree. Now, I don't really feel that so much with this because it's raw cut micarta. And when I say raw, it feels like a pair of jeans. This is maybe 60 grit. I'm being generous to say maybe 120 grit finishing. I don't like micarta personally. I especially don't like rag micarta, where you can feel that fabric-y feel. It's a personal thing. I know a lot of people do. Micarta is extraordinarily popular, and some people like that rougher texture. They feel somehow that it's grippier, it's going to stay in their hands better. That's totally fine. That's a personal thing. Personally, I'm not a fan. I don't like it. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it feels. It always looks and feels raggedy. It is going to wear on the edges in this low finish. When I work with micarta, the rare times that I do, because it stinks terribly when you're grinding it. I can't stand it. And the dust seems to linger in the air much longer. It takes hours, sometimes a full day, for all of the dust to finally settle out of the air. So I really don't like working with it. But when I do, I finish it to 600, 800 grit, and sometimes even buff it so that there's a smoothness to it, like this micarta here. So it feels more like G10. It's smoother. It has a prettier finish to it. And it won't start fraying around the edges. And this knife will. It will wear. And some people are going to enjoy that. It's the same guy that buys a brass or a copper knife or a brass or copper watch. And they like to watch it patina. They like to watch it age. And this will do that in its own way. It will begin to fray, especially in the spots where it contacts your pockets, going in and out of the pocket, back and forth. So that may be part of the love that people have for natural micarta. And same thing goes for this. It has that same tactility to it, that same feeling, and I get why people would like that. And it is kind of a nice feeling. It feels like you're rubbing your hand down the leg of your jeans. It really is very much that same feeling. So materials aside, there are a lot of different options from run to run. What actually piqued my interest, I had seen these popping up on Instagram and Facebook a lot. A lot of people really loving them. And as I sometimes talk about, I despise hype. I really do not like overly hyped things, and when you see a knife brand that everybody is talking about, and it seems like people are laying accolades onto them that seem unrealistic. This is the greatest thing ever, and these guys own 8, 10, 12, 20 of these knives, and they just won't shut up about it. Sorry about that. You're left to wonder, are these inexperienced people that are just now discovering an up-level knife from maybe the Benchmades or Spydercos they used to collect? Or are they knowledgeable knife collectors that are telling you, hey, you need to pay attention to something really great here. They're unrealistically low-priced. They're super cool. They're super awesome. You don't know these people, so it's hard to always judge that. What I'm going to say is this. I believe that the hype that I have seen for these is justified. We've discussed this with Hope Blade Works. We discussed this nearly a decade ago with Hinderer knives. Some knives live up to the hype and some do not. I feel, because right now the secondary market is not out too outlandish, you're not going to be looking at a $350 knife that people are flipping for $800 or $900. Then, no, the hype would not be worth it. These are being sold at the right price, direct from the manufacturer, direct from Vero Engineering. They are being sold at a really not too off-putting secondary price by most collectors. And I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of the collectors are merely selling one Vero to fund another Vero. And that's really interesting. And that speaks a lot to the overall quality of Vero knives. People are coming back time after time after time. They're frothing at the mouth when Joseph announces he's about to do a drop. People start liquidating other knives to buy a Vero. And I'm going to tell you right now, from my limited experience here with these four over the past month, I get it. I see why. The designs are modern, maybe even slightly futuristic. They're simplistic, but in a way that's still feature-packed. Again, going back to that Apple mindset. It's a very clean design. However, you do have some nice line work. You've got these bevels here that break up what would normally be kind of a boring design. You've got this inline flipper tab. Now, this is something that other companies, other makers have certainly tried to do in the past, but the execution really always hasn't been good. Anytime you do a minimalist flipper tab, you run into issues with not having that flipper tab in the right place so that it may or may not flip the blade as well as a standard flipper tab. When you get to be so minimalistic that it actually falls into the form factor of what the knife would be without a flipper tab. All he's doing is he's extending the tang to make this squared off tab, and he's cutting away the bolster area to allow you access to that flipper. And when I first saw them, I'm like, I'm not going to like that. There are some knives that work very well light switching, and some that work better push buttoning on the flipper tabs, depending on the placement in correlation to both the pivot and the detent. And I went, I'm just not going to like that straight pullback. I'm not going to like that. And the one knife that I had, and I think may have been the first maker to do it, was John Graham. When John Graham did the collaboration with Tashi and released the Midnight Razel. I had that 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I did not like it. And here's why. They left the flipper tab corners a little bit too sharp, and the detent was tuned like a standard flipper, where you had a very strong, very sharp detent. You don't need that when your engagement is this far forward and you're pulling straight back. So what Vero and Bestech have done have given you a detent that's much more, it's easier to do it with this, that's much more like a manual opener that would typically be too soft for a flipper. And because of this engagement, it's not being pulled from here. You're pulling straight back into the frame. It's the perfect detent strength. Had they done a strong flipper, standard flipper strength of detent and a flat face detent, this would be unbearable. You'd be pushing into it and you'd be hurting your finger and you'd be like, I hate this knife. Which is why I sold the Graham Razel the Midnight Razel as soon as I got it. I've loved the Razels that I've owned, but the Midnight, and as much as I love Tashi, it just didn't work with the way that it was made. And I immediately got rid of it the day after I got it. And that was several $1,000s. This is engineered perfectly. This is exactly the detent strength that's needed for that style of flipper tab. We'll go back up here to that beautiful isotope. Now, even though the frame is not cut away, you still have the same action where you're pulling straight back. And again, we see there is that minor difference from model to model. Here you have a flat top. Basically, it's a tri-top. So you have the three flat surfaces. This doesn't have that. You have very gently convexed, and then you have a bevel that goes all the way around the perimeter. It's an entirely different design, but it's still unmistakably Vero. The clean, smooth, flush pivot. The flipper tab, even though the bolster isn't cut away for the flipper tab, it's still falling into the design of the knife very, very well. This is an integral. The other knives are not. They're standard presentation, backspacer, and lock side or backside. Integrals are very, very difficult to make. They're very expensive to make. That is one big, giant chunk of titanium that's completely milled out from the inside out and then fitted with the lock and the detent and the pivot and all these other things done from the inside out. Very, very tricky, very hard to do. Another thing that goes back to that being more of like the Apple of the knife world, look how the branding is done. They are over-branded if you really get down to it, okay? Branding. Branding. Is there any branding on the blade? No, the blade, thank God, is sterile. You look at it and go, I can't miss the fact that this is a Vero knife. However, even though that would be typically over-branding by any other brand, it's clean and it's simplistic. Just very simple, Vero. And then just the V. Now, yes, if you get down in there, the V does have the ERO making Vero. But again, it goes back to that design engineer mindset and creating a logo, a secondary logo, that's super simple. And it's pleasing to the eye. And it doesn't take away from the overall design of the knife. There's no giant billboards all over the damn thing. That makes me very, very happy. So overall, the way that I look at this is the hype is worth it for the prices they're at. Can you spend an obscene amount of money with Vero? Yep. You can get one that has Timascus inlays and things like that, and Timascus pocket clips. And because of the raw materials being more expensive, the prices climb. But if you're the kind that goes, I don't really need all the fancy shit. I just need titanium and carbon fiber. Well, here you go. And it's affordable. And it's not so expensive that you don't want to use it. And that's very, very important. And in many cases, you have so many options when the order banks open up. Do I want belt satin? Do I want hand rub satin? Because there is a difference, and there's going to be a difference in cost as well. Do I want micarta? Do I want G10? Do I want Timascus? Do I want a clip point? Do I want a Wharncliffe? There are so many options with these knives, it's kind of crazy. And to be honest, it's a bit overwhelming. When my interest was most severely piqued was on the last drop, and he did a model with these bright orange G10 handles with bead blasted bolsters and a bead blasted blade, and I think the options were belt satin and hand rub satin as well. And I went, wow, it's not often that I go for orange, but holy shit, did that look good. And I really, it was orange or red. I'm sorry, I think it was red. And I went, holy shit, I really want that. The drop happened. I got there in what I thought was a reasonable amount of time, and they were gone. And I was going to cry a little bit. And then I reached out to Joseph. I'm like, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, please, please, please talk about these knives. And I've talked to my buddy Metal Complex. I'm like, what's the deal, man? I watched your videos on them. How do you really feel? He's like, dude, you know what? They're pretty friggin' awesome. Are they the next greatest thing to ever be made? And will they go down in the annals of knife-making history? No. He's like, but they're friggin' cool. They're well-priced. They're lots of fun. Great fidget factor. Because, again, that little notch back there, you can do the whole... See, I can't do it because I don't like to do it. But you can if you're dexterous enough. He's like, they're awesome. You got to try them out. So I reached out to Joseph, And I said, dude, I missed on that drop and I hate it. I really wanted one of those reds. I missed it. What can we do about maybe getting a knife out for video? And he's like, you know what? Give me your address. I'm going to send you a little care package. And he sends out 4 friggin' knives, man. This giant box arrived. 4 knives, 2 fulcrums, a hat, a t-shirt. I'm like, holy shit, this guy is awesome. And that's the other part of what has made this brand such a success. It's Joseph himself. He's a very warm and approachable person. He interacts in his Facebook group all the time. He interacts with his Instagram followers all the time. Not just answering product questions, but really interacting with them in a genuine way. He's happy for them with the selection they made when they're showing off their brand new baby, their cool new knife, and they're showing all their friends and taking cool pictures. And he appreciates that on what seems to be a very genuine level. And you know what? People like that shit. We like that the person designed, made, represented the products is one of us, gets excited about the knives, gets excited for us in our acquisitions, and is just a normal, regular, nice guy, not just out there pumping for sales. Now, before I forget, let's show the fulcrums real quick. Both of these are frag editions, which is very popular these days to do everything in frag. Very nice. This is the full-sized fulcrum, and then this is the mini fulcrum. And what makes these different or special or unique, let me use the bigger one here because it's just going to be easier to see, is that you have an EDC pry bar with a pocket clip. Thank God! So many don't have pocket clips and I don't get it. But they have these Weeha bits. And you can get a selection of them or just buy some Weeha bits on Amazon for next to nothing. And you carry the ones that you prioritize in your life. If you're always using a flathead and a Phillips, boom, you're good to go. If you're always using T6 and T8, put the T6 and T8 in there. You get extra O-rings that fit into here because at some point you're going to lose them. They're going to break. They're going to whatever. And when you pop that bit out of there, there's a magnet inside of the handle, and now you have a driver. It's a slick idea. It makes a pry bar, which for me is pretty useless, into something that you might actually want to carry every day. It's not bulky, it's slim, it's tiny, it fits right in your pocket. You don't even realize that it's there, and you're always going to have either screwdrivers or bit drivers, Torx or whatnot, whatever you choose to carry, at your disposal all day long, every day. Plus, yeah, you got a little pry bar, you got a little chisel, you got a little scraper, you got a little bottle opener. You're going to find uses for this as you have it in your collection. Now, I have 2 here, and Joseph said, hey, I want to throw you a nice little gift. I'm gonna send you a couple of the pry bars. Enjoy them. Do whatever you want to with them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep one and I'm gonna give one away as my normal monthly Patreon thank you. I do the Patreon giveaways all the time. So in this one, I'm gonna do one of these fulcrums. I mean, these are like $90 a piece, man. These are not cheap. And I'm going to do some other cool EDC stuff plus a knife, so it'll be kind of a big giveaway for November. By the way, I forgot to mention, just like the knives, they are individually numbered. Now, do they need to be? No. It's a friggin' pry bar, man. How much collectability is there really going to be in a pry bar? But it's there. And if they do become collectible, well, maybe having a specific serial number is going to be important to the collectability of that knife. That's one of the other things that I appreciated about the knives is the fact that they are individually numbered. But again, not like a billboard. It's not done somewhere on the blade where I don't want to see it. It's hidden away. There's my individual number, and it's on the back side of the flipper tab, and it doesn't interrupt the flow of the design. So I'm going to give you some close-ups here of these knives on the way out the door. This is an exceptionally long video, but I am covering 4 knives and 2 pry bars, so I hope you can forgive me. I was thinking about doing individual videos, and I'm like, no, You know what? It's so petty. Making people watch all these individual videos when I have the knives at the same time. They're all made by the same maker. That just seems silly. So I wanted to do one grand video. Picked out my favorite. Again, that's this. That's the Mini Synapse. I love that thing so much. Here is the XL Synapse. And it is a handful. It is a significant chunk of titanium steel and micarta. You know, normally I give the old bent clip, you know, some shit. But this is not your standard spring clip. This is actually, yeah, that is a sculpted titanium clip, but it's been given the utilitarianism of a spring clip where it actually works really, 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 really well. And it just looks like a spring clip. I love the swedges that are brought down from the top. The belt satin finishes are really, really, really nicely done. And that honestly is best tech spending money. Not running belts until there's zero life left in the belts, because that gives you an uneven finish on the surface. You've got nice grind lines on there. I love the asymmetry of having the slot on one side and not on the other. Now, for me, it would be much more useful if there was a slot on both sides. But I like the asymmetry of having that. A lot of the stuff that I do as well in my knife making, I will do certain things that are asymmetrical in design because I like how that looks. It's fun to have one personality on one side of the knife and a different personality on the other. Then we'll come back over here to the axon. My favorite blade profile in all of the Veros is the axon. I love this modified Wharncliffe. It looks aggressive, but it also looks futuristic. And it really fits well. This truncated tip matches well with the rectangular shape, the notch cut into the blade. The top swedge is done beautifully. I mean, as far as blade shapes go, this is the one. If this were this in that exact configuration, oh man, I think I would be absolutely in love forever. Oh, see, I went for the flipper tab that doesn't exist. So I can flick it out. I can slowly, manually open it like a Sabenza or a buck knife, or I can front flip it. So you've been given a lot of options with that one. And then, once again, back over to that beautiful isotope. It has a wildly different feel in the hand. It is heftier because it is an integral. Very large blade. Nice smooth action. And there's that belt satin once again. That clean pivot design. Nice inlay work. You don't feel that inlay in the titanium at all. It's beautifully done. Nice stonewash finish on the titanium. There again is that signature slot. She's a slotty girl. Slotty, naughty girl. And then again, that prominent swedge. What I didn't mention also is the edges are very, very nicely done. Very sharp, comes down to a very thin edge. Overall, yeah, they're worth the hype. I go back to this being my favorite. These were some of the most recent releases. And somebody in the Vero group had asked, as I said, hey, they're like, how come there's no videos on the Mini Synapse? I'm like, oh, there's one coming next week. That was last week. I was supposed to have it done, and I got sidetracked with my own work, unfortunately. And the guy actually came back to the post. He's like, dude, we're waiting. Well, here it is. I did put them all together, but this ends up being more of a highlight for the Mini Synapse just because, well, it's my channel, and I can do that shit. This is my clear favorite, even though I typically like a larger knife. This just does it for me. and it looks great. I like the subtle beveling, the triplane design to the front scale. I like the fact that it is a bolster lock instead of being a liner lock or a frame lock. So instead of being a frame lock, now I have that same look on both sides. And even though a liner lock is as strong as a frame lock, in the back of our minds, in the recesses of our imaginations, frame locks are stronger, even though no, they're not. So that's my take on Vero Engineering. Take it for for what it is. Limited experience, only playing with 4 models. That's still a lot more than a lot of other people have had the chance to do. If you've been looking at them, following him on Instagram and thinking, should I go for it? Should I really try, as hard as it is to get in on these drops and get one of these knives? Is it worth all the headache and aggravation because they are so limited run? I would tell you, yeah, do it, go for it, absolutely. Don't sit back, don't sleep on this brand, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Vero and for Joseph. Congratulations for building a wildly successful brand in a relatively short amount of time. I know a lot of custom knife makers that want to make this leap, and they still can't do it. And I've seen some that have tried and failed. And your clean design work, your understanding of what true design language and DNA of design really is, to allow all of these to be recognizable as being in the same family, yet being distinctly different from one to the next. It's a very, very difficult thing to pull off, and you did so with grace and poise, and the interaction with the people, man, that's really a big, big deal. So congratulations to you, Joseph. Thank you very much for sending these to me and being so patient. Let me play with them for as long as I have. I'll get these back out in the mail as quick as possible. To everybody else, as always, click like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that BS that we have to say as YouTubers. It really actually does make a difference. And please sign up with my Patreon, and you'll get a chance in a larger bundle of goodies to get one of these fulcrums in part of your little prize package. And I'll see you guys on the next video.